This is part 2 of my solution to this formative assessment. It's our first formative assessment that we took about evaluating algebraic expressions. And in the first video, I worked out these 3 problems. And this is my second take for the second video because a student pointed out to me that I made a very simple error in this, which happens from time to time when you are doing a bunch of operations. And so I wanted to make a new video to remove that mistake from the record. Anyway, here we go. We're going to evaluate these algebraic expressions. And in order to evaluate an algebraic expression, you have to substitute numbers in for the variables. And we've just been told what the 2 values of these variables should be. A is equal to 2 and B is equal to -3. So if I substitute that in, it looks like this. And I'm being mindful of including my negative number in parentheses. That is our convention to make sure that we acknowledge that that negative sign is actually part of our number that we're subbing in for B. It's not the same as this subtraction sign right here. So anyways, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 operations in this problem now, and I just need to figure out which one to do first. I do have some grouping in these parentheses, so I will look inside there and I find a subtraction. And so I will evaluate that first. 2 minus a -3, that's 5. I'm still squaring it, multiplying it by 2, and then subtracting it from 3. Again, I write a complete expression on each line. So now I can just follow the order of operations. I don't have any more grouping happening here. So I can do the exponent and then the multiplication and then the subtraction. So 5 to the second power is 25. Still multiplying that by 2 and then subtracting it from 3. This becomes 3 minus 50 when I do the multiplication. It's a common mistake at this point. Students will often do the subtraction first and then the multiplication. That's not what we want here. If you wanted that to happen, then you would have to put parentheses or some kind of grouping around that subtraction problem. We don't have that here. So our final step, 3 minus 50, just gives us a -47, and that is our solution. And in the second one, I will be a little more careful when I substitute these values in. A is 2, so I'm going to square that, and then I'm going to cube B, which is -3, and add the result to B squared, -3 squared that is, times A cubed, which is 2 to the 3rd power. And in my previous attempt at making this solution set, I squared this 2 instead of cubing it. So my penance is to redo this video. Anyway, here we go. I have 2 terms, and I could really evaluate this entire term. It's composed entirely of multiplication and exponents. And that's all going to happen before I do this addition. Same with this one. I've got multiplication and exponentiation, which is all that's going to happen before I do the addition. This addition will be the last thing we do. So to that end, I can do a couple of operations in each step. First of all, let me just square my 2, and then I multiply that by -3 squared, which is -27. And then I add to that the -3 squared, which is 9, +9, times 2 to the 3rd power, which is 8. So I did 4 operations in that step. I did all the exponents. And that's okay because they don't depend on one another. And I'm just saving a little space, but it's still very clear that I have an equivalent expression here. And it's equivalent to each of the expressions above. On with the multiplication. 4 times the -27, that's -108. I'm going to add to that 72. and negative 108 plus 72. I like to think of that really as kind of the difference between 72 and 108. I know my answer is going to be negative because I have a bigger negative number. And I end up getting, let me just make sure I get it right. I've got from 72 to 100 is 28. And then I got to go another 8 units, and that brings me from 28 to 36. So my answer is negative 36. There's a lot of different ways to think about this addition problem in your head. And that is the subject of our number talks when we think through all the various ways that we can do this type of math in our head, and that helps develop our number sets. Anyways, check out the third part of this video, or the third part of this solution, the third video in this solution set to see my solution for number 3.